Okay, so we're going to dive into the world of ethical hacking today. You've sent us a bunch of stuff from RoleCatcher about it, so I guess you're pretty curious about what these digital detectives actually do.
Yeah, and it's a good time to be curious with cyber attacks. Becoming more common, more serious every day.
Hmm.
These ethical hackers, they're really the front line.
Yeah, it's like they're playing offense and defense at the same time, which I guess is kind of the point.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just protecting systems, they're actively looking for those weaknesses.
Hmm.
The kinds of things that even the people who built the system might have missed.
So it's not just about being good with computers, it's about how you think too, huh?
Oh, absolutely. It's high stress, long hours sometimes, and the tech is always changing, which is a challenge, but that's also what makes it so fascinating. Every day
Yes.
is different and you're always learning something new.
And you're making a real difference, right? Preventing data breaches, keeping people's information safe. It's got to feel good.
It does. It's a good feeling, like being a digital superhero, protecting the world from cyber villains.
Okay, now you're making me want to sign up for a hacking course.
Right.
And speaking of courses, RoleCatcher mentions certifications a lot. They even list specific ones that are super valuable in this field. Are we talking like a required thing here or more of a nice to have kind of deal?
It's not always required, but imagine this. Okay, you've got two equally talented musicians, and they're both auditioning for a band. One has been playing gigs for years. The other one just practices in their basement. Who do you think the band's going to pick?
Okay, point taken. So it sounds like those certs are proof that you can not only play the cybersecurity music, but that you've been in a band before.
Exactly. Certifications like the CEH, GISCP, or OSCP, they show employers you're serious about this. And plus, studying for them keeps your skills sharp.
Which is critical because, like you said, this tech changes faster than, well, faster than anything.
That's right.
And speaking of keeping up, RoleCatcher mentions continuous learning is huge E in this field.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a learn it once and you're good kind of deal.
Mhm.
We're talking online courses, workshops, conferences. They even have these capture the flag competitions.
Capture the flag. Now that sounds interesting and maybe a little intimidating. What is that? Is that where they like try to break into each other's systems?
That's like a safe, controlled version of that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the teams or individuals, they're racing to solve these security puzzles and challenges. It's actually a blast, and you learn a ton by doing it.
So it's like a training ground for those real world scenarios that they're going to face.
Exactly.
RoleCatcher also talks about different career stages, starting with junior ethical hacker and working all the way up to principal ethical hacker. That sounds like quite the journey.
It is, and just like any journey, there are milestones along the way.
Mm.
You know, Starting out, you might be doing vulnerability assessments under supervision, but as you gain experience, you could be leading a team-setting security strategy for a whole organization.
That's a lot of responsibility, especially when you consider what RoleCatcher says about the ethical dilemmas these ethical hackers can face.
Yeah, that's the thing about this field. It's not just about technical skills. It's also about your judgment. You're constantly making calls, figuring out how to use your powers for good. It takes a strong moral compass. You know what I mean?
Which makes sense given the kind of access ethical hackers have. I mean, they're the ones who can see behind the curtain, so to speak.
Exactly. And that kind of access requires a high level of integrity. You're trusted with sensitive information. You have to use it responsibly.
It's like being a doctor, but for computer systems, you have to take an oath to do no harm, even if you see a way to operate that might be technically impressive but ethically questionable.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Ethical hackers need to always keep the big picture in mind. It's not just about finding vulnerabilities. It's about understanding the impact of exploiting them and ensuring their actions ultimately make the digital world a safer place.
And that, my friend, is why it's so much more than just a job. It's about using your powers for good and protecting what matters in a world that depends on it more and more every day.
Well said. The really cool part is it's a career path that's only going to become more important in the years to come.
Okay, I'm hooked. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's unpack what those early days as a junior ethical hacker actually look like.
Let's do it. Imagine this. You walk into the office or maybe log in remotely, and your first task is vulnerability assessment.
Right.
And I don't mean like finding weak spots in the vending machine.
Although finding security flaws in the vending machine does sound like a fun side project.
Maybe for later, but seriously, imagine you're handed this map of a company's computer systems. Your job is to find any place where a cyber intruder could sneak in.
So like looking for unlocked doors, broken windows, that kind of thing, but in computer code.
Exactly, and you'd be using these special software tools to scan for things like outdated software weak passwords or systems that aren't configured properly. It's all about being really meticulous and thorough. spotting those things that most people wouldn't even think twice about.
Sounds like you need like a good eye for detail and a whole lot of patience.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that require patience,
Yeah.
let's talk about those industry-accepted methods and protocols.
Hmm.
Remember how we were talking about how ethical hackers don't just like randomly start probing systems?
Yeah, it's not like they're just like banging on the keyboard hoping for the
Right.
best.
They follow very specific frameworks like the OWASP testing guide. Think of it like a cookbook for ethical hacking with recipes for finding different types of vulnerabilities.
So if the recipe is for like a SQL injection attack.
Exactly. They follow the steps, see if it's possible to exploit that weakness in the system they're testing. And very importantly, they document everything they do every step of the way.
Which makes sense because they're
Yeah.
going to need to present their findings and recommendations later on, right? They can't just show up at the boss's office and be like, yeah, your system's got holes. Good luck with that.
No, not exactly. Those reports are crucial. They outline the vulnerabilities, they found how serious those vulnerabilities are,
Mm.
and most importantly, what the company can actually do to fix them. So it's all about providing actionable insights, not just, pointing fingers.
So it's about being a problem solver, not just a problem finder.
100%. They might recommend anything from simple fixes like updating software strengthening passwords to way more complex solutions like redesigning systems for better security.
So it's like being a digital architect, right? You're going in and reinforcing the weak points of a building.
I like that. And as you gain experience and move up the ranks, you might even be the one designing those secure systems from the ground up.
That's pretty cool. Speaking of moving up the ranks, RoleCatcher also talks about senior ethical hackers providing training to other employees. What's that all about?
Well, even with the tightest security, sometimes the weakest link is us humans.
Oh, come on. It's not always our fault.
Okay, maybe not always, but think about it. One wrong, click on a phishing email, and boom, someone just bypassed all those fancy security systems you worked so hard to build.
Okay, fair point. So these training sessions are all about like teaching employees how to spot those phishing emails, right? And probably a lot more than that too. Yeah.
Definitely, they'll cover things like password security, social engineering, safe browsing habits, basically how to be a good digital citizen and not accidentally invite hackers in.
Yeah, like you're teaching employees to be their own first line of defense. They're like the neighborhood watch of the company network.
Exactly. And just like a neighborhood watch program, it takes everyone being vigilant and aware to keep things safe. Plus, the senior ethical hackers might even run like simulated phishing attacks to test everyone's awareness.
Wait, hold on. Simulated phishing attacks, as in they're going to trick their own coworkers? That sounds a little intense.
It's all done ethically and with everyone's knowledge, of course. Think of it as a safe space to learn from your mistakes because, let's be honest, who hasn't clicked on a link they probably shouldn't have at some point?
Guilty as charged. So these simulations are about making people aware of those tempting clicks, without having to deal with the real world consequences.
Exactly. It's all part of creating a culture of security awareness within an organization. Because at the end of the day, the best security system is one that's supported by a team of informed and vigilant employees.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about the people using it.
Precisely. And that's what makes ethical hacking such a fascinating and multifaceted field. You need a deep understanding of both the technical A&D, the human elements of security, to be successful.
Speaking of fascinating and multifaceted, let's talk about these capture the flag competitions for a minute. RoleCatcher mentions these as a way for ethical hackers to hone their skills, and honestly, they sound like a blast.
They are, imagine a digital escape room, but
Yeah.
instead of trying to break OUT, you're breaking in virtually, of course.
Sign me up. Okay, so walk me through it. What are these CTFs actually like?
So you'll be in teams racing against the clock and each other to solve a bunch of security-related puzzles. And these puzzles, they can involve anything from cracking codes to finding vulnerabilities in web applications.
It's like a scavenger hunt, but for hackers.
Right? Each puzzle you solve, you earn points. And there's usually a prize for the team that racks up the most points by the end.
And I'm guessing these CTFs aren't just for bragging rights. There's some serious skill building happening there too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a safe, legal, and incredibly FUN way to practice your hacking skills, learn new techniques, and see how you stack up against other ethical hackers.
Yeah.
Think of it like scarring for martial artists, but instead of throwing punches, you're throwing lines of code at each other.
I love that analogy. So it's a chance to learn from the best, test your limits, and maybe even pick up some new tricks along the way.
Exactly. Plus, it's a fantastic way to network with other people in the cybersecurity community.
Yeah.
You never know, you might even meet your future employer at one of these events.
Networking A&D, sharpening your hacking skills. Sign me up. Okay, so now that we've covered the exciting world of CTFs, let's shift gears a bit and talk about career progression. RoleCatcher mentions those different stages, right? Starting with junior ethical hacker and working all the way up to principal ethical hacker.
It's a journey, that's for sure. And just like any good journey, there are milestones along the way.
So talk to me about those milestones. What does that progression actually look like from entry level all the way to the top of the ethical hacking food chain?
Okay, so picture this.
I'm picturing it. I love a good visual.
You're a junior ethical hacker,
Uh-huh.
fresh out of that, metaphorical hacking academy.
Mm-hmm.
You're mostly doing the groundwork, right? Vulnerability assessments, basic penetration testing, writing up those detailed reports.
Making sure no digital stone is left unturned.
Exactly. Now, fast forward a bit. You've got a few years under your belt. You're an ethical hacker. Now you're trusted to lead your own projects. You're digging deeper into systems, maybe even specializing in a particular type of security testing, like web applications or network security.
So instead of just finding the open window, you're figuring out how someone could get a key disable the alarm that works
Right. You're thinking like a hacker, but with that good guy purpose.
with a good guy purpose.
Exactly. And then you level up again. Senior ethical hacker. Now, not only can you find the vulnerabilities, you can practically predict them. You're advising companies on their entire security strategy, training other employees.
Becoming a mentor like a cybersecurity Yoda.
Okay, I like that you're the go-to expert guiding organizations to a more secure future.
And finally, the peak of the mountain principal ethical hacker.
This is where things get really interesting. You're not just dealing with one company's problems anymore. You're looking at the big picture, setting industry standards, maybe even advising governments on cybersecurity policy.
Wow, from scanning for weak passwords to shaping national security, that's quite the career trajectory.
It is, and it shows just how much demand there is for these skilled ethical hackers. But like we've been talking about, it's not just about those technical chops. RoleCatcher really emphasizes those personal qualities that are important in this field too.
Yeah, they mentioned things like curiosity, skepticism, creativity. It's not what I expected from a cybersecurity job description, to be honest.
Right, you might think it's all ones and zeros, but it's really about how you think it. Curiosity, for example, it's what drives you to constantly learn to figure out how things work and how to break them ethically, of course.
So you're not just following a checklist, you're actively searching for those vulnerabilities, trying to anticipate what that malicious hacker might try.
Exactly, and that's where the skepticism comes in. You're not taking anything for granted, always questioning, always looking for that hidden weakness.
They also mention creativity and problem-solving skills, which makes sense because cybersecurity isn't exactly a one-size-fits-all kind of field.
Definitely. Not every system is different. Every attack is different. So you need to be able to think on your feet, come up with innovative solutions, adapt to new challenges as they arise. It's kind of like playing chess. It all thinking a few moves ahead.
And just like in chess, you can't win by making the same moves every time. You got to be adaptable, creative.
Absolutely. But it's not enough to just be this brilliant introverted genius,
Yeah.
hacking away in isolation. RoleCatcher really stresses the importance of communication skills too.
Which, again, isn't something I would immediately associate with hacking. So explain that one to me.
Well, think about it. You've just spent weeks meticulously analyzing a company's security. You found some critical vulnerabilities. Now you have to explain all of that to people who might not even know what a firewall is.
So it's not just about being right. It's about being able to explain it in a way that makes sense to everyone, even if they don't speak hacker.
Exactly. You need to be able to translate those technical details into plain English. Explain the risks and recommend solutions in a way that really resonates with your audience, whether it's the CEO or a room full of employees.
Sounds like ethical hacking is as much about people skills as it is about technical expertise.
It's a delicate balance, but that's what makes it such an interesting and rewarding field. You're not just working with computers, you're working with people, helping them understand and manage the risks of this, increasingly digital world that we live in.
And speaking of risks, RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from the challenges of a career in ethical hacking. It can be demanding, stressful, and sometimes even a little thankless.
That's true. You're constantly dealing with the bad guys, trying to stay one step ahead. It can be mentally draining, and you have to be prepared for those long hours, especially when there's a major security incident.
Yeah, it's like being an on-call superhero, always ready to jump into action when duty calls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But despite those challenges, most ethical hackers wouldn't trade it for anything. There's a real sense of purpose in what they do. They're the ones protecting our data, our privacy, our digital way of life.
It's a career that really requires a unique blend of skills, knowledge, and that unwavering moral compass that we talked about.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, ethical hackers are defined not just by their technical abilities, but by their commitment to using those abilities for good.
Well said. This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. We've learned that ethical hacking is a challenging, dynamic, and incredibly important field, one that requires a really unique combination of technical expertise, problem-solving skills, and a strong sense of ethics.
And if you're up for the challenge, it can be an incredibly rewarding career, one that lets you really make a difference in the world.
So if you're fascinated by technology driven by curiosity, and you have that passion for making the digital world a safer place, then ethical hacking might just be the perfect career path for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the world of ethical hacking. Until next time, keep those firewalls strong and your digital detective hats on.